This is episode 15, I believe. And with me, I have a very special guest today. This is Philip Welder, who's a senior in our program here at UT, and it's great to have him here. Today's Axiom is Exploring the Space. We just performed for you Steve Reichs' part of Steve Reichs' drumming, which is the first part. And this is in preparation for a big concert we have here in the Butler School on Wednesday, November 5th, I think it is. So if you're in and around Austin, it's a free concert. We're going to be performing the entire piece, parts 1 through 4, drumming complete, and sort of a once-in-a-lifetime thing for us. We haven't done this yet, but always have, wanted to, so we're really, really psyched about that. And so today, today's Axiom is Exploring the Space. We're going to talk a little bit about phasing and what kind of goes into that, maybe what we can learn from that as well. And so it's great to have Philip here. And so Philip just wants to say a few words about his experience with this, and we'll take it from there. So welcome Philip Welder to the show.
Thank you, everybody who's out there watching. The first time we did this, I was actually really surprised. The first time we did it, I did it with Dr. Burrett. He phased, and I, was the rock, and it was actually a lot easier than I might have imagined or thought before that.
And that's really important, because I think a lot of us are a little freaked out about this. When you first hear it, you're sort of like, what's going on? What is it? You don't really understand it, and then you think, boy, that's got to be really, really hard. But I think, if you just give it a try, give it a shot. Philip was, we just were doing it in the studio class one day and had people sort of cycling in and out, and Philip was by far the best one at it, and he didn't even know that going in. So you don't really know until you try. That's great. Go ahead, Philip.
Well, this is this is a really important piece of music, and every percussionist should play it, I think. After having done it for a little while, but. This is probably the only phase piece that you'll ever play as a percussionist, I think what it really teaches you about music in general is to sort of live in the space and respect the space. It requires a really literal interpretation of rhythm and a very disciplined and faithful respect of space to pull this off.
Yeah, so let's explain that a little bit, because if you're new to this, you probably maybe don't quite understand what he's saying. So what we're doing with this, actually, was we're playing a very simple pattern, actually a pattern that Steve Reichs got from his studies in Africa, in African drumming. And so you can feel this pattern in a lot of different metric feelings. You can feel it in 2 or 3, and that's very common of music from Africa and the African bell pattern especially, which this is sort of based on, and African rhythms are based on. So what he means by respecting the space and living in the space is we're playing a pattern, and he's staying in the same tempo, and I'm just moving forward a little bit. And so we're exploring the space between quarter notes, essentially, moving very carefully from one to the other. Rather than just going from one to the other instantaneously, we're going gradually from one to the other. And so it's really interesting to actually play apart from each other and hear how those rhythms actually shift very slowly. So that's what we're doing. We're going to do this again for you here in a minute to show you more specifically, give you another opportunity to hear this after we talk about it. But that's what he means by sort of exploring the space. Okay, and I think he's right. He has to have really good, solid time for me to be able to move away from him. So there's a lot that he can learn from that too, in developing your sense of pulse and time. And that's what the integrity of the rhythm is obviously important. Otherwise, you can't hear how the pattern actually moves. And that's something that really only gets better as you do this and do this. Okay. Let's see. Anything else you want to add to that?
Not really. No,
okay. So this is probably Steve Reichs' most important piece, and it's written for percussion. So, it sort of boggles my mind why I don't hear this being performed more. It's very common to hear part 1, and we've never done part 2, 3, and 4, but it's been a lot of fun putting that together too. And it's minimalism, so it's processed music, okay? So the whole piece takes about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half. It really depends. It's sort of like baseball. Like it doesn't have doesn't have like a starting time or an end time. It just sort of ends when it ends.
Yeah.
And so that's really kind of interesting as well. But what's really, really interesting about this is it's a process that has to complete itself. So in other words, if you come on Wednesday, November 5th, you'll see that there are more phases, and really we explore the phase. We explore the each pattern as it starts in unison and then moves ahead another quarter note and moves ahead again and moves ahead again until it finally overlaps itself again. And so that process isn't done, right, until it's come full circle around. And so one of the things that drives me crazy about minimalist music when people hear it for the first time is they often complain that it's too long. well, I kind of liked it, but it's too long. Why does it have to be that long? Well, because it's minimalism. It's a process that has to complete itself. That's why it's long. And it's if you've ever read Steve Reichs' music, is it what, gradual?
Music as a gradual
process. He's got all kinds of really interesting explanations, really, of what minimalism is, and they're really interesting. And I think it's one thing he uses, but one thing I use to explain minimalism is, when you listen to, it's sort of like the minute hand on a clock. It moves. You can tell it's moving, but you can't really see it moving. It's moving so slowly, and that change happens so slowly, but all of a sudden it is a minute later, and you can't really see that. So that's kind of what listening to minimalism is like. The rate of change is moving so slowly that you're really exploring on a much deeper level. It's almost like looking at a page of music that has lots of notes on it, and only instead of hearing the whole page of music over a 3-minute standpoint or 3-minute period of time, you're going to listen to the first measure over that same 3-minute period of time and explore the change in that ratio. Does that make sense? So those are some explanations that I think are interesting. So to close the show, again, we're doing this Drumming Complete, which is Wednesday night, November 5th, which is actually Wednesday night that the PASIC convention is here in Austin. So if you're coming in to Austin for the convention and you maybe, I don't want to push you away from the Wednesday night concert, but if you want to come and check it out at UT, we'd love to have you. And if you come that night and you listen to the show, you watch the show, and please come up to us afterward and say hello. I'd love to meet you if I haven't met you already. And our subscriber list is growing, and that's fantastic. And so we're going to do this one more time, but before we do that, Philip, being a guest, has to ask the question of the episode. So we're going to let Philip do that, and then we'll play the phase one more time, and then we'll be out. So Philip, what's the question of the episode that we can encourage people out there to leave messages and reply on the forums?
Well, it's are you respecting the space? And not just in phase music, but in any music. I mean, how what's the integrity of your tempo and rhythm, and how faithful are you being to the space that the composer has chosen to use?
Excellent question. So, are you exploring the space? And I would love to know too if you've tried phasing, and if you haven't, what are you waiting for? Right? Okay, so we're gonna do this one more time for you. Hopefully, after that discussion, this will make a little bit more sense and encourage you to try it. Okay, here we go. Ready?